Hi there guys, got a video here for you today on a new rifle coming to the channel, and this one is going to be on the AGT Vulcan 3. So what we're going to be doing in this one is just taking an overview look at the rifle, as well as pointing out some of the things I like about it, some of the things I dislike, as well as showing you how this rifle shoots. Before we get into all of that though, this particular rifle was picked up from the Crawley surplus store. I buy all my rifles from the Crawley surplus store simply because they're the best RFD in the country. Now I do want to briefly mention that the Crawley surplus store will be attending the British Shooting Show at the Birmingham NEC. They're going to be setting up a stand in the exhibition centre, as well as bringing a bunch of different rifles from a bunch of different manufacturers, as well as a ton of different shooting accessories. So if you're planning on coming to the British Shooting Show, it's well worth a look out for their stand. Me and my dad will also be attending the show, and we're going to be helping out on the Crawley surplus store stand. So if you want to come say hello, you're free to do so. With that all said and out the way, let's get on with the Vulcan 3. Overall, I think this is a fantastic little rifle. I've been shooting the rifle now for a couple weeks and I've had absolutely no problem with it whatsoever. The rifle's nice and solid, all of the metal work is incredibly high quality and finished off absolutely beautifully, and the rifle overall has performed exactly how you want an expensive rifle to perform. There's been no accuracy issues, no regulator issues, no issues whatsoever. The stock itself is very nice in the hand, and just like the AGT Uragan 2, the grip is absolutely beautiful. This stock fits me an absolute treat. It still is just a tad too short, but I won't hold that against the rifle, as I have that problem with pretty much all rifles, so I think that's more of a me issue. The rifle itself uses a CZ barrel running through the entire block, and then that's capped off very nicely with this shroud. The shroud itself does have a nice amount of detail on the external diameter. The stock itself comes pre-fitted with a nice long pick rail at the front there. To be honest with you, I'd have probably preferred it to be cut level with the stock, just so you don't have this sticky outy bit at the end, but that's just personal opinion. At the front here we have a fixed bottle, so you can't unscrew the bottle whilst the rifle is pressurised, but it is a 480cc carbon fibre bottle with a maximum fill of 300 bar. Other than that, we have ambidextrous cocking, so you can flip the cocking handle over from the left hand side to the right hand side if you want to, or vice versa. I have mine situated on the right hand side, as that's where I prefer it. And then the end of the shroud is also threaded, although this isn't a standard thread, this is an M14 by 1.25 thread. So as you can see there, it's slightly longer, or slightly larger I should say, than a standard 1/2 inch UNF. But you can get a dedicated AGT suppressor to screw on the front of there, although I haven't found the need to include any more moderation. The rifle is really nice and quiet, even fitted with a standard shroud. The magazines for the rifle are also very nice indeed. They're nicely made, nicely finished. They have a aluminium outer housing with a plastic inner drum, although I've found no problems with the magazines whatsoever. They're nice and accurate, they work beautifully, and I've had no issues with them. So there they are. The magazines themselves are standard drum type mags, so to load them all you need to do is misalign the pellet hole first. Just like so, drop the first one in, and then keep rotating the drum with your finger and dropping the pellets in, just like that. This particular rifle is a 177 and has a 16 shot magazine. What I'll do next is just remove the shroud and show you the barrel. So as you can see there, the end of the barrel. Again, the barrel itself is not threaded 1/2 inch UNF, it's another M14 by 1.25 thread, and the barrel is overall 500mm long. After disassembling the shroud, we can see the inner core, so there's quite a nice inner core to these rifles, a nice amount of baffles, and this end screws onto the barrel. The pellet travels through the baffles there, moderating the sound really quite nicely. The rifle overall is super quiet. It's not absolutely silent, but it's quiet enough for most. I would say it's quiet enough for backyard garden use, although with an additional moderator on the end, it would probably be almost silent. Up next, I'll just remove the stock and show you the rest of the metalwork. And there we have it. So a nice simple setup. We obviously have a linkage trigger running to the back, and then we have this part here is our hammer spring at the back there, and then this arm here is what cocks the rifle. So that brings it back, and then the hammer itself on the bottom here latches onto the trigger mechanism, and then when we pull the trigger, that's allowed to fly forward and hit the valve. But what I wanted to show you is just the nice simple components. There's no magic tricks or anything like that going on here. It's all nice and simple, and it all works absolutely flawlessly. The other thing that I want to mention whilst we're here is that the Vulcan 3 is fitted with a D-pinger straight out the factory. So when you're shooting the rifle, you hear no trace of any valve ping. With that all said, that's a basic look at the rifle. What we'll do now is go down range and I'll show you how this thing shoots. Right then, here we are all set up at Pete's airgun farm in the 50-yard range. We've got a target set out on the back wall, the target being an A4 piece of paper with a number of printed targets on it. The targets themselves are 25mm in diameter with a red dot in the middle. We're using unweighed, unsalted JSB Express pellets straight into a magazine and straight through the rifle. The groups themselves are 5-shot groups, and all of these groups here were done using a magazine. The rifle does get very slightly better when single shot loading. However, single shot loading is a bit of a fiddly operation, so we're sticking to using the magazine. And as you can see here, the groups appearing on screen now are really quite impressive. From a standard rifle straight out the box, it is quite impressive to see, and overall I am over the moon with how this thing has performed. It's performed exactly how you would want an expensive rifle to perform. You still do get flyers occasionally, although as we're using unweighed, unsalted pellets, that is to be expected. And at the closer ranges such as 30 yards, the pellets were pretty much going through the same hole each and every time. So again, very happy with how this rifle performed. From a 200 bar fill, I was roughly getting around 300 shots. So from a 300 bar fill, you could probably expect sort of 500 to 600, which is really quite good. And overall, the rifle was fairly consistent as well. So here we are all set up with my Caldwell chronograph. My dad's shooting the rifle and I'm filming the rifle. And again, as you can see there, the rifle's nice and consistent. Overall, we put 2 magazines through this rifle, so 32 shots in total, and we're left with a feet per second spread of around 11 over those 2 magazines, with 1 or 2 awry shots. If you took those out, it dropped to around a 9 feet per second spread over the 2 mags. However, we leave everything in just so you can get a raw understanding of how these rifles perform. With that all said and done, we'll move back over to the bench and we'll finish out the video. With that all said and done, the last thing I'll do is just go through and point out some of the things I like about it and some of the things I don't. Quite honestly, there's nothing major I dislike about this rifle. There's a couple aesthetic things I don't like, but I'll point them out shortly. For now though, everything about this rifle feels amazing. The stock is fantastic in the shoulder, the trigger is nice and light and predictable, and overall works fantastically for a linkage trigger. The cocking is nice and smooth. The magazines work flawlessly. There's no major valve ping or any major noises coming from this area of the rifle. It is obviously a bullpup with the action at the back here, so you do get a bit of action noise when you're shooting it, but it wasn't anything off-putting. Overall, the rifle's nice and quiet. The nice big sound suppressor at the end there works absolutely beautifully, and the CZ barrel itself is really nice and accurate. My only minor complaints with this rifle are with the rail and the bottle. Now for me personally, I would have preferred a matte bottle to go with the rest of the rifle, as a gloss bottle just stands out a little too much for my liking. And I think the pick rail at the start here should have been cut level with the stock. There's no detriment to having the rail longer, but I think it would have looked better flush with the stock. One thing I have seen on a couple forums is people complaining about the size of the gauge here. I personally didn't have any problem reading it, but if you're sort of a little older, maybe need to use glasses, that may be a little bit of an issue for you. But what I'd do in that case is just mark the gauge with like a felt tip pen, one at your fill pressure and then one at the minimum lowest pressure. From shooting the rifle, the regulator seems to be set around the 100 to 90 bar mark. So if you put a little line at 100 bar and just filled it up when you got to that point, I don't think you would have an issue. But apart from that, I am super happy with this thing. This is going to be one of those rifles that we don't really do much to, just a few tweaks here and there. I would like to see if I could get the efficiency a little better. The other thing that I might have a go at is making a metal trigger for the rifle. So the original one is plastic. To be honest with you, that doesn't really bother me, but a metal trigger would be nice to see on there. But we'll see what we end up doing to the rifle. With that all said guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.